Hi, welcome, people. People. This is the voice of Bold Business Radio, and today's program is called Use Business Values. It's program 156. I am your host, Jess Dewell, and today we are exploring and building on the question, how do we incorporate values into every business action? And the thing is, it's such a big deal. It's a big deal in how we define value. It's the big deal in how we decide to show up. It's a big deal in terms of how we're demonstrating it and the expectations not only that we're setting for ourselves to give to other people that they want us to meet, as well as the expectations we have of other people. Can they meet our expectations? Whew. Talk about a little bit of discipline. That is necessary. Discipline, conversation, awareness, thoughtfulness, slowing down is another big piece of this as well. So Eva, Scott, myself, we're going to be talking about this today. And I will tell you what, our priorities, not only from each of us here, this is going to be a little bit of a behind the scenes. Maybe we'll use the voice of Bold Business Radio today and how we work on the show as an example of the way that we use business values. You'll hear more from all three of us right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
In preparation for the show, the first thing, of course, what I had to do was I printed, because I wanted to do this anyway, and this just gave me the reason to do it today instead of sometime in the unknown future, was to print out 2 slides from Weave Value into Business Growth's program. And the first one is personal values, and the second one is organizational values. And on these, we talk about value, values, add value, and the value. It's kind of an interesting thing. So to set the stage, not to make the topic any bigger than it actually already is, there are a lot of different things that we're trying, and we're fleshing out this new concept for the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and that is we talk a lot. We bring on people who have a lot to say to this program as well, and we invite people to join in our live stream using hashtag VBB Radio. Today is the same. You are listening live stream right here. So during the live stream, provided you're listening to it later, still use hashtag VBB Radio. We will find your comments and we will include them and respond to them. Beyond that, we want to do more. This is a conversation more than a lecture. Thinking about red directions, values, resourcefulness, being an advocate, giving quality work, and showing up with quality, right? Interesting concepts there. None of that says, let's just always tell information we know, right? We're building this together. The Voice of Bold Business Radio is all about that. We are building what it means to lead effectively right here, right now, in this date, in this time, in this space and place. What do you think about all that, Eva?
I think that redirection is where company that knows its values, because I think that businesses and business people usually don't think about the values, at least not intentionally. They have them somewhere, they maybe even think about those values, but the question is that they don't ask themselves, am I really doing what I am advocating? Am I applying what I'm telling other people? Am I applying that to my own business? I have to say that working with the Red Direction all these years, there is this consistency and transparency, and that's what makes me happy being part of a Red Direction team. At some point, Pam and Amanda should join us in one of the conversations as well.
Agreed.
They're an amazing part of the team, and that's the whole thing. We know business values, and we incorporate even our personal or our separate business values with what we do with the Red Direction and the Voice of Bold Business. And
to really have any concept of values, adding value, creating value, participating in it, receiving it, knowing that it's happening around us. It's important that we have our own stake in the ground and we really understand our own voice and our own objective and our own purpose for doing what we do every day. The reasons that we get out of bed, the reasons that make us smile or not, eat breakfast or not, stop and smell the roses, as our friend Joelle Dawson would say, or not.
That also speaks about the importance of business values of the business that we work with or we are part of it.
You know, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, Eva, and I'm going to ask you that too, Scott. What's one of your personal values?
I'm really tough on integrity.
You are.
That's something that I don't make compromises over that. That's one thing that I can put out there and vouch for it, because I've learned a long time ago that I'm only as good as my word, and I have to follow that.
Go for it, Scott. Which one of your values?
I'm going to rewrite the rules just a little bit because I think my values are more interesting if I give 3 values, and that's what you normally like people to do, and that's what you advise. And this is the first time I've gone through this exercise very seriously, and I thank you for it because there's some real value to it. And the comparison and contrasting between the 3 of them I found to be self-enlightening. There's a cluster. There's honesty. Jargon might be transparency, not deceiving. So that would be one of them. The second one is loyalty, and then the third is integrity. So the honesty, it's outward looking. It's being true to other people. And if you are honest, if you're transparent, that takes the sting out of your shortcomings, and it takes the power out of your failings. If I've got a secret I'm trying to hide from you, that's going to cause a lot of problems. If you know it, we can let the chips fall where they may, but it's no longer going to have more damage than it inherently is going to have anyway. That would be one. Loyalty is being true to what you're being loyal to. You never give up. In terms of weddings, that's what the through sickness and health vows are all about. That's your loyalty. The thing with loyalty is that you really need to choose wisely. Choose your spouse wisely, your friends, your career, and also your causes and your beliefs. And you also need to be skillful, because there are sometimes you need to be loyal to those things or people that you don't choose. And one of the examples would be your children that you have. You can be loyal to them, but you don't choose them. And another example of that is that you don't choose your adjacent neighbors. So if loyalty happens to be one of your core values, and you've got your children and your neighbors and others, then you've got to be skillful in terms of how you execute that so as to make sure that you don't go off the cliff. And then the third one is integrity, and I appreciate you're giving me all of this time. Integrity is being true to yourself. So honesty is being true to other people. Integrity is true to yourself. And something that kind of surprised me is when I was thinking about it a little bit more deeply, integrity is like technology. It's neutral. It's not the technology that counts. It's what you do with it. Technology can be used for evil or can be used for good. Integrity is the same way, and that's where we get honesty among thieves. Is that the phrase that I'm looking for?
Yes. So there's some sort of code of conduct.
There are those of us who believe that you're placed on this earth for a particular purpose. There are other people who just think that you've got a strength or a talent that only you have. You're unique in all the world. So your integrity is being true to yourself and following your own star, but it's also aligning yourself with universal truths. You can be true to yourself and true to the universal goodness that's out there that empowers integrity to be of benefit. So those would be the 3 values that I have, and you've been very kind to let me get them all out at one time.
It's perfect that we got them all out at one time. I'm a big proponent of 3s, and I personally have 3 as well. Those of you who listen to the show on a regular basis know at least one of them off the top of your head. They are curiosity, elegance, and truth. The concept of what we're doing here with our individual values, and then we show up. We show up to these red direction values every day. And I will tell you, the first half of Red Direction's life, okay, so we're talking 7 years-ish, give or take, 6 months, It was haphazard. I didn't even have my own values written down. I fall into that trap that the majority of people listening do. I have so many values, I don't know really what they mean and how they show up in my life. Or I've never really thought about it. Even more so, maybe if I've thought about it, I've never written them down and thought about what they actually mean. And Scott, what you just did is actually what we, this is a program that I do because it is so invaluable, because it sets the stage for every part of the conversation. And coming back to this concept, I'd say Red Direction started out with what I would call accidental values. Values by throwing things against the wall and what stuck. What did people perceive actually happened, and then building on that versus going, of course, this is what Red Direction does. Not thinking about how delivery was going to be, not thinking about setting the customer expectation ahead of time. The team at that time, so that we were small, it was me and one other person at that point, we kind of were like a leaf on the top of a river. So we were going with the flow, but we weren't just bending with it. We were at the whim of the river. The little leaf on the top has no control, never stops. It just goes where the water takes it. That was good and it was bad. It was good and it was bad because we learned a lot, but we didn't learn enough. And we didn't learn the right things, I think. I think we didn't learn the right things. I think we would have had different results at the time, and we would be in a different place right now had we actually had values that we came together around. Eva, before I continue with that concept, what do you think about this accidental values concept?
Well, it happens. Obviously, it happened to us.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't agree completely with that lack of control. I think that we were, in a way, lucky because the people who gathered around the Red Direction had their own personal values somehow lined up with the Red Direction.
Because we finally got clear and it made it easy. Because I will tell you, nobody came and rallied around Red Direction and said, I want to be a part of this. When I would talk about it, not only I may or may not want to be a client, people were like, I don't know how I would be a part of this. When I got clear about Red Direction and separated myself from Red Direction, you are absolutely right. People were like, including you, I'm in. I get this. I can hitch what I'm doing and what I believe in to this and be part of something bigger than myself.
On many occasions, and I'm not speaking only for myself, but you know that we had that conversation like, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be part of the Voice of Bold Business Radio or some other Red Direction project had not I believed in it.
We'll just stick with the Voice of Bold Business Radio as what we're trying to do and for this project, because we have so much going on at Red Direction that it would be hard listening to follow everything that we keep in our brains every day. Right? With the Women's Leadership Roundtable, with the We Value into Business Growth, with this program, with client work, with the Unstuck Quick program and the Voice of Bold Business Exchange. I mean, you name it, we've got things going on all the time.
I think it's important for people to understand. It's not that we have only business values and nothing other than that. We do have timelines. We do have spreadsheets. We do have a plan. So business values and incorporating them, are one part. So don't sit and wish about and think about business values without having operational grid, operational strategy. Just want to say that out loud.
And so you're right. I talk about things in such a way that's like, hey, nope, everything that you would expect to be underneath it is underneath it. And it is solid. It is solid. Okay, so Voice of Bold Business Radio, right? We have been doing this now for a year and a half. We turned 2 in October already, and I can't believe that we're already there. It's so fantastic. We started the show, and then we figured out more of what we wanted to do in terms of delivering the experience. However, before we started the show, we had a purpose. Looking at Red Direction's values, right? This is something that Red Direction does to provide information to leaders everywhere that are looking to aspire for career growth, to solve some sort of a problem, to figure out what the heck it means to lead today, because we've got in-office staff. We've got remote staff. We have people who love and live by the gig economy, if you will. And so with all of those different things, it makes leading that much more difficult. And when we come down to communication, and we're going to stick with the Red Direction values at this point, we wanted to share that. We as a team were like, there's so much information here. How do we get it out? How do we take Red Direction's values of resourcefulness, advocate, and quality and give that gift to the world? And you know what I said? I said, well, let's just talk about it.
I was pulling my hair out. Like, it's not going to just happen like that. We need this and that. And I know Scott, I remember him, saying, well, it was something about, we really need to connect the dots.
I don't even remember how quick this turned around. I think I said, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. We put a few plans into place and then we started. And yes, it was more than just a few days. It may have been 3 weeks, may have even been 6 weeks, but that's kind of pushing it in the Red Direction world. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. And this, no different. We did it. We're here. And then once we started doing it, we had this idea. We knew what our expectation was going to be. And from my perspective, I'm an advocate for business owners, myself included, as I am a business owner. And I want that information out there. And so the Voice of Bold Business is a place for resources, not only places you can go click and learn how-tos, but also how other people think, how other people communicate, so that we can get and see and use more of what's around us, increase our own resourcefulness. Thinking about this concept of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it, that was all we wanted to do. Are we being useful? And the answer is, Eva, we are being useful because we have listeners. We have regular listeners. So every single one of you out there, thank you. We know we are giving you something that is necessary. Now, how do we keep delivering on that experience? How do we take this concept of quality and make you want to listen more? And even more importantly, make you want to listen to this so much that you're going to start sending it to friends and colleagues and people that you know when you know you've heard something from this program that would help them. That's where we're at now. And it's kind of this big idea. And sure, we have listener metrics and we have social media metrics and we have download metrics and we have website visitor metrics. And that's good. And that's really good. It's when what I'm measuring is some of the other impacts. And one of the ways to do that is, are we getting shares to particular programs? What is that program about? And can we replicate that so we have more of those happening? And this is just a business process of how we are working at Red Direction. So Eva, what would you add to that?
We do need purpose. And I think that business values are connected to specific goals with some specific purposes, or one purpose, or what, no matter the definition, but there is a link between those. And I think that when you make that when you close that circle, that things are getting way better and faster, and that you have a better, more clear view of what's happening out there with your business, with your people. And I think that in business values, if you want to maintain those business values, you need to include quality communication. And when I say communication, I really think like sit and talk with people and not just look at the metrics. Don't get me wrong. I am all about the data,
sure.
But actually, and
this is a role reversal.
Yes, you do need to talk to people.
You do. And that's actually a really big part of it. And that's one of the reasons that we ask for engagement on this program. Share your story. What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? Did you experience something different? Ask questions during the show because you're not the only one with questions. And if you have a question, at least 5 other people listening to this show have that same question. So speak up. We love that engagement. Plus, it's just us. I mean, it's between you and me and, everybody else that's listening. It's just us. It's the Voice of Bold Business crew, those of us who are dedicated to learning, those of us who are dedicated to our own personal development and building awareness. It's so true. Without communication, we could never replicate the results of what's good, because all of us, Pam and Amanda included, who are not with us today on this program, all of us, what do? We talk, we bounce ideas around, we work through problems together, and we create the space to do so. Once upon a time, I wanted to have 30-minute meetings. Well, talking about red direction in 30 minutes is really hard, because we're a remote team. Everybody's across the globe here, Europe and across America. North America, well, specifically the United States of America. I better be very specific here. And the purpose of that communication is, 1, to catch awareness, 2, to not get to know each other a little bit more, 3, when we stop and really listen, how we learn by listening and understanding and learning about how somebody else on our team thinks. And you said something before we started the program, Eva. You said, we are a mature, what did you say about mature? Because I'm not that mature. I'm not quite sure.
Look, as a team, as a group, we are pretty mature individuals. Doesn't mean that we are all like saints outside the work. I'm just saying that when we work, when we are on the project, when we are in business, that we are mature people, and it's easy to not get along, but to resolve issues or setbacks and to move on and to correct things in a proper way.
Yes.
So I think that we are lucky, actually.
We use all our own stuff. All of the things that I have created for companies that we deliver in some capacity throughout everything that we do at Red Direction, we live by what has been created and is the product and the services of Red Direction. One of which is this booklet that is called Stay the Course. And you have to be really special to get this booklet, to be able to print it out, to download it and look at it. It's by coming to the We Value into Business Growth program that is going to be happening in October in the greater Denver area. Welcome to come from far away as well. You don't have to be in Denver to come. And one of the things that they talk about is that they talk about, hello, I'm talking about us in the third person, is that to be forthright and be direct has more weight and more impact to moving a conversation forward. And it reduces the opportunity for shadows and elephants to kind of hang out in the corners where nobody knows where they're at. Scott, what would you like to add to that part of it? Be forthright, be direct.
We're not a directionless crew that we have, that you're a little bit of an icebreaker. You will say, well, let's go ahead and start Voice of Bold Business, and we'll go out on both YouTube and a podcast and audio. Let's go ahead and do iTunes. Let's go ahead and be simulcasting on Facebook as well as YouTube Live. All of these are your particular direction, and we wouldn't go there unless it were for you. But then that's Voice of Bold Business. Red Direction is, of course, larger than that. There's the We Values that you're talking about and the other initiatives, and they all kind of tie together. They're all in sync with each other. Then you have a crew that implements it, and I agree with Eva. You've got a pretty mature crew here. They seem to work well together. And I've been long enough with some of the enterprises that you've had, Jess, to see that it's not always been that way.
That was very gracious of you to say it just like that. That was nice and soft. I appreciate it.
Well,
they were train wrecks.
But the positive component is that instead of giving up, you've been persistent, and we've been persistent, and made those mid-course corrections. They are learning examples, and I don't think that you ever arrive, or maybe a person arrives and then they turn around and they start doing other things. So far, so good. So whatever it is that you're doing externally, you're also applying internally, and the direction seems going north rather than going south.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And everybody listening, this is the Voice of Bold Business Radio. You're listening to program 156, Use Business Values, where myself, Scott, and Eva, as Eva would use the phrase, dishing about business values today. And it's true. And we're using ourselves as an example because we're three people. We do different things. We have three different sets of personal values, and yet we come together in a way that allows us to work together because we understand the values of what we're doing when we're together. And we use that to inform our business decisions, to inform our problem solving, and to inform how we communicate in general for the best connection, to resolve any issues, to smooth over things that need to be smoothed over, but also to face the things that really need to be taken care of in any moment. Hannah has a question. So remember, use hashtag VBB radio. Eve is watching. We're going to incorporate these questions as we go. Hannah asks, how can we tell that we set our values properly? Ooh, this is interesting because now let's specifically talk about personal values in this one. And I would love your feedback. What do you guys think, Eva and Scott?
If you don't articulate a value, if you're just out there and it doesn't even occur to you to frame your approach to business or your relationships with others in values, you're just flying blind, you're going by the seat of your pants, you're just going by instinct, you're not doing it deliberately, does that mean that you're going to necessarily go off course? And the answer to that is not necessarily. It might be that inherently you've got values that you haven't self-examined, but they happen to be there and they're working really well. Identify what values there are. And then once you've been able to identify the value, I would say, ask yourself, how's it working out? Is this really giving me the results that not the inner me, but you go out of yourself and you look back at yourself and you're kind of objective about it. And you're looking back and saying, is this really serving me or not? The other thing is to have a mentor, or to have someone external from you who is able to, and be honest with them, and then they'll give you feedback. And if you choose the right mentor, then that person will do something that is in alignment with who you are, that's also in alignment with the universe, and that's how you know that you're on the right track.
I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to tell you a secret, Hannah. The first part of the secret you might already know. Well, actually, it'll be a surprise. I agree with Scott at this moment. The second part of the secret, the second part of the secret is that every single time I stop and I think, and so about once a month, I sit and I dream. And then there are other times between that once a month where I actually carve out time and say, I'm not going to do anything here. I just want to sit and see where I'm at and where I'm going. And what does that look like? What does that feel like? What is that experience going to be? A lot comes up. And there are other times where I'm just kind of down. And when I get down, what ends up happening is I don't want to do anything. I'll find something else to do. I mean, my closets in my house, my closets at my office, my email box is so spick and span. When that stuff starts to happen, I realize I'm avoiding something. And it's in that avoidance that I really get to take a look and find out what's happening. And usually it's missing one of my personal values. I'm not curious for some reason. Everything is too big and heavy and clunky. I'm lacking elegance. For whatever reason, it doesn't ring true in addition to feeling true and being true in my experience. And one of the things that I will share right now is that, when I recognize those things, I have to honor that, because sometimes if you were listening to me and then I said, so I sit down and I binge watch a TV show. Okay. Or I sit down and I try and read a book, but I just can't, so I sleep instead. Both of those things are things that I will do when I get down. And they're also indicators for me, but it's because I'm choosing to be aware. And when I put my awareness on it and go, all right, here I am in this place. I want to go binge watch this show. Does that give me the impact that I want right now? Am I going to be able to meet my deadlines right now? Or do I apply my wonderful tenacity of getting it done at all costs? Which, by the way, that's a double-edged sword too. And after I work through those, there's a different thing that might happen. Usually, it's a feeling of relief and lightness. And then on top of that, I look down and I look at the shoes that I'm in and what I have accepted. And I realize I am not anywhere close to what I must be doing to be fully present, fully engaged, and excited about applying curiosity, elegance, and truth into the world every single day and in every single interaction. So maybe the question comes from the fact your shoes are bigger than you're actually filling, and we need to take a look at that too. How do the life unexamined piece that Scott was sharing? And I don't know if Eva and Scott will fess up to this, but I'm pretty sure it's obvious when I'm down and I show up at a meeting. I feel like I hide it pretty good, these guys and Eva and Scott. So I shouldn't say guys. These Scott and Eva know me well enough. I think I can't hide it from them. Yet sometimes they give me the grace to just let me be.
When we talk about values, and I really don't think that there can be a disconnect between personal values and business values. Those type of values are connected. At least that's how I see them. Because, and how do you know that you are on the right path? Well, you feel comfortable or not. So, it's not like your values might not be values for other people. But if you feel comfortable with them, if that aligns with what you do in personal life and in business life, that means that you're onto something and you should explore further.
Now, if there's friction, it doesn't necessarily mean values, personal values are out of alignment with business values. It usually means there's a miscommunication or there's a fundamental difference of something, right? Some of us that are listening to this have a job or a career that we do because it happens to be what we're good at. It is not what fuels our passion or kindles our excitement in any way. We do it because it helps us get to being able to do the things that kindle our souls in different ways. So I want to put that out there too, because sometimes our reason for joining a workforce might not have anything to do with the work itself. And I'd like to acknowledge that and say that is okay. And that is real, because some of us are made to be creating things differently. And some of us are made to be doing other things, yet money is the common thing around the world, currency. And we use currency to demonstrate some of our values by what we choose to buy. Do we buy on a value meaning the most cost effective? Do we buy on value meaning more expensive, higher service? Do we decide to spend our money on something that has value that actually is a higher quality or a new technology, which also means it would be more expensive than something that's already proven and commonplace in the market? So we're talking about use business values, right? And I want to stop and recognize that some of us define value as a cost, as an investment, something of that nature that has to do with currency. Another version of value is how we're talking about it here. So I wanted to bring up the other side, because people are talking about this going, come on, it's what we do, it's our process, it's whatever. And it's more than that. It's how we live our life. It's when we're faced with something, do we go out or do we stay home? Do we answer that email or do we wait until tomorrow? Do we make that extra phone call because we're called to, even though we're exhausted? Whatever the case may be, that's where the values that we're talking about, integrity, loyalty, elegance, to name three of the ones that have been mentioned from us so far, have a place. And then we're talking about business values. And I think we need to bring that in, because you're right, Eva, we've got to talk about the defining of the business values. And we see things, we hear things, and we feel things. And I'm using the word things on purpose because the experiences we find ourselves in, the words that we choose to listen to, that's how, when we come together at work, that's how we know what business values exist. Because remember, we were talking about accidental values. We have the accidental values, and then we might have the ones that say, well, we were supposed to go through this mission, vision, values thing, so we did it, and we got these words on paper, and we talk about them, and we can recite them. And then you turn around and you do your work, and something different shows up. And that's because we just talked about 3 ways to define the word value, right? 3 ways to define the term value in terms of money. But then we talked about there are multiple ways to determine the value of how we exist. And then the value of a process, right? Do you follow the steps to get the results that you want? So we've got 3 different ways to define values too, which I find incredibly interesting. And with that concept we're working with, I really think it's important that we talk about understanding and creating a shared meaning. And there are some things that we can do. And I've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. I only have 3. I couldn't count my notes here. I have 3 ways that we can start to create shared meaning to help answer this question. How do we incorporate values into every business decision? And so when we're starting with values, we're starting with this concept of we're doing something to increase what we're doing as a team, right? How our clients feel the value and add value to their experience, how we bring value to the company in terms of profitability, and then the values that we use to make our decisions. And so the first of the 3 ways that I'm going to share, granted there are a lot, but the first of the 3 ways that we can build shared meaning right now is that, number 1, remember there are other perspectives. Because if we're the owner of the company, if we're the manager of the team, if we're brand new and we know it all, by the way, every single one of us on this panel has been there. So I think I can safely speak that we've all been there. We're the smartest one in the room. Great. When we're the smartest one in the room, we have to remember other people are also smart. They just have different experiences than us. And so remember the other perspectives. When you hear somebody say something, ask, what do you mean by that? I'm not sure I understand how you're using this word experience. We'll use that one since that's what's coming up. That concept is the more we know about other people's perspectives on our teams that we are working with, the more we can understand the way that their work output looks, the way that they're going to approach a problem, what they may react to so we can work on ourselves to be better deliverer of information. All right, the second one. The second tip for creating shared meaning is fighting the temptation of immediate results. This is a big one. We all want more sales. How are we going to finish this week? Are we going to have more sales this month? Are we on track to the growth that we need? Holy cow, we're behind. We better figure out something. And where is that low-hanging fruit? Yet, when we're talking about building shared meaning, we're talking about the long-term output. And yes, part of creating long-term sustainability and resilience in a business is to recognize the ups and the downs and what makes those ups and downs happen, which, by the way, are almost always a function of how we are working together. Are we using our technology efficiently? Have we decided a process that is efficient for everybody? Do we all know what the common goal is besides the output of the metrics? And do we know our reason for being on the team to accomplish that particular goal? So immediate results are always something we want. We're always looking for that next viral thing. We're always looking for that immediate sale. We're always looking for that. Yet when we're talking about business values, we're talking about the long term. And Eva had mentioned that earlier in the program. And the third way that I pulled out today to talk about how to build shared meaning is that we chip away, piece by piece, a project productively. So that means there's a project. That means it's fully defined. The problem has been articulated. That means the decision has been made of the general path that problem will be solved by. Okay? Then on top of that, understanding that sometimes, depending on who's setting the goals and how specific those are, like in our team, I got a problem or a decision made, and I've got an end goal. And then the team, Eva, Scott, Amanda, and Pam, pipe in and we figure out what the milestones are to know we're on the right track. And sometimes they're in order and sometimes they're not, but they're all necessary to get to that end goal. And sometimes we try something and try something and try something, and it's not working. We're not getting the results we want. And it's easy to give up because now we're talking about it. We fall back into, well, it's not getting us the results we want in some sort of timely or quick fashion, so we're going to move on. No, 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 no. Make sure that we're doing everything that we can before we give up on an idea, because sometimes it's the right idea with the wrong resources. Sometimes it's the wrong idea with the right resources. And that's where ongoing conversation and problem solving happen. It goes back to then that first piece. When we have multiple perspectives, we may see something from somebody's experience and interpretation and feedback from what's happening that will give us a better result to chip away. And iteration is one way to talk about that. And that's kind of like the bane of my existence, because I don't need immediate results, but I also don't really need this iteration thing. So for me, that's one of the things that's really necessary to keep in mind, is let's do this one step at a time. What are we trying? How does it move us toward our goal? Is actually what we're doing moving us toward that goal? As long as it is moving forward, we know we're on the right track. It's just up to us to figure out how to make the impact we want on the time frame we want, which is kind of nice. So the three things: other perspectives, fight the temptation for immediate results, and keep working when things are working, and figure out productivity on the way to the goal. 3 ways to create shared meaning around what's going on in a business, which means whatever your business values are will be deepened and broadened and have nice, solid roots to deal with drought, to deal with floods, to deal with crazy wind and weather and lightning and anything else that might come up for this organism, this living organism, our company, that we are actively wanting and striving and working toward profitability year after year after year. Whew.
Cool.
You think?
Can I paraphrase what you just said?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So as you were talking along, I was just making a few notes. So when you first get involved with a team, you get to know the team. Don't make assumptions. Get to know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, all of that sort of thing, and then figure out what your place in that team is. And recognize that there's an ebb and flow, and that might be the immediate results. Well, sometimes we'll have immediate results, but sometimes we won't. So that just recognize there'll be an ebb and a flow. But the important thing to do is to continuously make mid-course corrections. They say that an airplane is only on course at one time, right on course, and that's when it's on the ground at its destination. When it's in the air, it keeps on correcting from one direction to the other. A torpedo does exactly the same thing. And another way of phrasing that might be continuous improvement. And then finally, the result of this is that you'll be continuously going towards that one goal, and increased profitability is one of the goals, but there are any number of the other ones.
I'm going to jump in right there. Increased profitability is always the result of something deeper and more meaningful than if we were just to go after sales processes. And that's a difference between what we're doing at Red Direction and other sales-driven concepts and approaches, is that profitability is an outcome of what we're doing. It is not an immediate result. It is not the end game.
And using Red Direction as the model, I've written down more skillful, and then the final thing I wrote down was maturity. So the more mature that you become, the natural result would be, and correct me if I'm not right on this, or elaborate if I am, and that is that the goal is to become mature in business, mature in a wholesome sort of way.
I'm just thinking about conversations I've had recently, and sometimes I still just want to be a teenager. Sometimes I still want to be a 7-year-old.
Why?
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. And a lot of us, we learn something, and then we still pretend to be ignorant about it. And we stick our head in the sand, and then we avoid it. However, once we become aware of something, it doesn't even matter what it is. It could be world hunger. We now have a responsibility to that. And that could show up in many ways. I'm not saying all of us are going to go out and raise money to help cure world hunger. I'm not saying people are going to go out and give food to everybody they see on the street that says they're hungry. I could be saying, I'm going to waste less food in my own house. I'm going to make sure there's a process after we have a client event that the extra food goes someplace that it could be useful. Because what can I do? I can reduce food waste. By the way, this is just really what I do. I could reduce food waste by doing this, which helps make sure there are resources to get food to other people that actually really need it, because I'm not using too much. I'm not taking advantage of anything, and I'm making sure that we're giving back to the community at the same time. So that's just like one example. How we choose to solve that problem, I think, is going to be very individual. And I don't know, based off of that, what would you guys say, Eva and Scott? How would you approach that concept of solving a problem or taking responsibility that's reasonable responsibility when you know and I'll become aware of some sort of a problem? I made mine really big. You could make yours in your family. You could make yours something that has happened or could happen at our team, in our team meetings and the work that we do together every day.
Well, you know what? I keep going back to one Chinese saying, and I'll paraphrase it now. It reminds me that I should constantly look at things from different directions. And it says, when the wind starts to blow, some people build walls, other people build windmills.
So, and I think we've sort of answered Kate's question. So #VBB radio. Kate asks, what are some questions that we need to ask ourselves when creating business values? Our companies exist to solve a problem. And if we're not actually solving a problem that somebody wants to be solved, we have no business being in business. And we won't stay in business because there's nothing there to grow the business on. So we already are solving a problem. So when we're talking about business values, it's what do we want to ensure shows up in the delivery of the solution we are offering to solve when we're solving somebody's problem.
Well, we eventually, in the end, everything that we do define us. Everything. So choose wisely how you want to be defined from within and from the outside. Are you sending the same message?
And yes, exactly, Eva, because you're inviting other people to your party, your vendors, your employees, your local team, your remote team, whatever your team looks like. You're including other people. So first and foremost, provided you are a business owner, your personal values are different than your business values. Now, your personal values may have helped you find the problem to solve in your company. However, what you're doing can't just be your values. Otherwise, you alienate anybody else that wants to come onto your team, because as much as we want mini-me's to come do what we do, how we do it, that doesn't actually happen in reality. So Kate, I would say the first part is know the problem you're solving and then decide what makes it different. So now you're thinking about how you're doing it differently than your competitors. And that is actually one way to really figure out our business values if we don't have them yet, because I was actually talking to two different companies last week. One, 15 years, never wrote down a vision, mission, and values. They've just kind of been solving this problem and figuring it out as they go. Second company, been in business for 5 years, and they wrote down values, but they were having all these problems. And after 3 questions, it became very clear that the business values and how business was being done were different. So the 3 questions that you can ask yourself, okay? The first is going to be, when we deliver the product, what is most memorable to our customers? The second, when we give the customers what they want and in the way that they expect, how good does it make us feel? And the third, do we even know we're doing a good job for our customers? There's a whole bunch more, but you can start with those 3. And taking like what Scott did, he thought about his 3 values, and he spent time totally thinking about them and defining them and putting concrete examples and concepts behind them. That's something that I think is really important to be aware of. And so if we don't know or we need to do a check, start with those 3 questions. The goal being, those 3 questions are going to illuminate the information that you want in such a way that you can find more questions to ask. Invoke that curiosity. Invoke that desire to continue to solve the problem the best way possible, and know. And apply that to your decision making. Which, by the way, we didn't even get to any sort of decision making. We've been talking about values the whole time. So Eva and Scott, before I close out the show, do you have any last comment or word of wisdom or practical example or anything at all that you just want to share before we wrap up?
One of the techniques or one of the ways to figure out if you're living a life that's worthwhile is to explicitly examine your values. And that's true on the personal side. And then that's also true on the business side. If nothing else, if people start thinking as a result of this program, values, what's the role of values? How important are values? And then what are my values? And then comparing my values to are they working or not? Then perhaps that'll be the purpose or make this particular program valuable. And then the following question is, now what? What's the next step?
Ooh, that's a great question to end on. And I'm going to answer it totally selfishly. And that's to come to the greater Denver area October 19th and join us at We Values into Business Growth. This is program 156, and you can find program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P156. That is Voice of Bold Business Radio /P for program 156. You can also search Use Business Values. By the way, keep tweeting, keep sharing, keep talking. You can email us hello@reddirection.com and ask your questions. You can use that hashtag. By the way, this is something else we're building. We're coming up with other ways for you to interact with us so that we can work in questions as well as figure out what else we can do to be useful and make you as resourceful as possible. This is a conversation about current issues businesses face. Sometimes we don't know we face it. Sometimes all we see are the symptoms and the problems, and we can't figure out how to get underneath it. The use of business values and working to answer the question, how do we incorporate values into every business action, is what leaders today must do to create lasting, resilient businesses. So we want to know from you, and we want you to reflect on the importance of using business values.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.